What's going on, everybody? In today's video, we're going to be talking about some massive topics. Obviously, Corey Graves and his whole situation has been rather crazy. He is now being removed from TV yet again. Seems like there's some major issues there that we got to discuss, some updates as well. Britt Baker, a lot of controversy surrounding Britt Baker and AEW. I'm very fascinated by this topic because the dirt sheets could be making things worse. So as always, I'm going to give you guys an update to the video that we made yesterday. And yes, we are going to talk a little bit more about this TNA controversy, and it's all coming up right here on the Ango Show. Welcome back to the Ango Show, ladies and gentlemen. Britt Baker is going to be our starting topic because obviously we spoke about Britt Baker yesterday. There's been a lot of talk that maybe Britt Baker and AEW are just not on good terms. AEW potentially putting Britt Baker on the list of talent who won't be utilized until their contract expires. Well, now there seems to be some clarification going on about this. There is some truth to the issues with Britt Baker. However, Brian Alvarez and Dave Meltzer actually offered a little bit more context. And I think this is actually some pretty good context because I do think there is some truth to what Wade Keller is saying and, of course, what Dave Meltzer and Brian Alvarez is saying. Basically, Meltzer says, my basic impression is that this is a story that does have some truth to it, but it got blown way out of proportion. That makes sense. We're dealing with the dirt shits here. I think we all understand how it is with wrestling reporting. Alvarez says, well, what happened is I think Wade Keller on one of his shows was talking about it. And then basically it's one of those things where people read what he said, and then they took this and make this even more dramatic and more dramatic and more dramatic. He says, if you talk to a lot of people on AEW, obviously Britt Baker is polarizing. There are people that don't like Britt, and the idea that nobody in the locker room likes Britt is absolutely not true. I talk to a lot of people, and at the end of the day, she's not being used right now, and most people don't know why. Ultimately, it's Tony's decision whether she's going to be used or not, and nobody I talk to, and it's a lot of people that talk to Tony, I mean, nobody says she's not coming back. It's not like she's never going to be used again. Her contract is going on for a while. It's just not being used right now, and that's what the story is. So I do think that makes a lot of sense, right? This is a story that has a lot of blown out of, a lot of things blown out of proportion. But I want to touch on something. It doesn't change the fact that this is an issue within the AEW company where people are not being utilized, people are having an issue, people aren't being liked, the culture is an issue. That doesn't change. That doesn't change. My opinion on that will not change. But my opinion as far as Britt Baker leaving the company could very well change. In my opinion, Tony Khan, if you're not going to use Britt Baker, let her go. If you're not going to use these people that don't want to be there, let them go. And if there is not an issue at all, just start utilizing them. Start utilizing them. Your product can benefit from it. That brings us to PCO. Okay, so we've talked about PCO and his whole situation with TNA. Basically, there's a massive update as to what is really happening here. I spoke about this on the Ango Show Live, which airs Monday through Friday, 12 to 2 p.m. Eastern. You guys definitely don't want to miss the live show. PCO went to GCW, and basically he beat up the Digital Media Championship. He took a sledgehammer to it. GCW was not happy about this because GCW was told that he was going to be furthering a storyline with TNA. Then it comes out, according to Fightful Select, that PCO was actually just going into business for himself. We know that he's not with TNA. We know that he's left TNA. We know that he's gone from TNA. A couple things that you need to know is that it does sound like TNA actually has the real Digital Media Championship in their possession, which is good. That means PCO was using the replica belt. However, what was really interesting is Dave was talking about this, and he says PCO was originally offered a new contract, and he agreed to it verbally, but never actually signed it. So he was basically offered this contract. He says, I'm down. We're going to stay, whatever. Basically, TNA, as you guys know, there was a couple people who were given like new contracts, but at a lower rate because they were trying to save a little bit of money. Some of these people took the new contracts. Some of these people didn't take the new contracts. Some of these people left the company. Some of these people are still in the company. PCO was one of those people who was reportedly affected by the cuts, and they basically offered him less money. Apparently he agreed to it, but then never signed pen to paper. and then basically off a verbal agreement when it came to going to the signing table, it ended up being less money, and therefore he decided that this is not going to happen. TNA actually ultimately decided not to renew his contract basically at all. And they wanted him to drop the title belt on this live episode of Thursday of TNA Impact, and that was the agreement. And then they basically never heard from PCO again. PCO shows up in GCW, goes into business for himself, beats up the Digital Media Championship, starts doing that rant. And what's actually really crazy about this whole thing is that I think the PCO issues, and I mentioned this on my live show, there was just a lot of talk about Scott D'Amore making promises to re-sign talent, and he was one of those people that had a lot of promises. Obviously, Scott D'Amore is gone. Anthem keeps him, and they don't mind keeping him, but then this whole situation goes down, and it's, it is what it is. I'm not going to say anything personally against PCO because I'm not in his shoes. I can only go based off of reports. I can understand that this is probably frustrating, but I never think it's a good idea to go into business for yourself. PCO beating the shit out of the Digital Media Championship honestly wasn't that good of a look. And if you're Tony Khan, maybe you do stay away from that. If you're WWE, maybe you stay away from that. That brings us to our final topic, Corey Graves, ladies and gentlemen. Really just crazy time period for WWE. Obviously, a lot of great things are happening in the company, a lot of great culture, a lot of great morale. Basically, PWInsider.com has reported that there are no plans for Graves to be at tonight's WWE NXT, and there is actually no further update on his status within the WWE. WWE at this point is just really not happy with the situation. For a lot of us, we thought it was a work, right? I even thought potentially this was a work and they were going to be telling a story. That doesn't appear to be the case. So what is happening here with Corey Graves is that he's clearly not happy there. WWE is removing him from TV again. WWE is making it relatively clear that he's not going to be on TV until this gets figured out. And the reality is, man, like, I love Corey Graves. I think he's a hell of a commentator. He deserves a lot more respect by this company. I'm sorry. Like, I'm not going to defend. I love Pat McAfee. I love Joe Tessitore. I love Wade Barrett. I love Michael Cole. There is a way to make this work where Corey Graves could be included. Obviously, WWE is upset by this. They were upset by the tweets. The tweets are gone. WWE is doing everything that I don't want to see WWE do. I think WWE should kind of be a good business owner and be a good business in general and be good boss and say, listen, like, you're right. Like, we don't look at NXT as a demotion. We understand you do. Go to NXT for a little bit. Just help us out in this situation, and then we'll bring you back to Raw. Which maybe that's part of the frustration too, right? Is because he's being juggled around everywhere. But if that was the situation, I would be okay with it. Again, I'm not in his shoes, so I can't speak for what would be okay or not, but definitely some interesting stuff. It sounds like this is just getting started.